Of all the objects used in ritual, one of the oldest is also one of the simplest: salt. A crystal pulled from the earth and sea, yet across religions, ceremonies, and occult traditions, it becomes something more. It purifies, it protects, it seals. But why did salt, of all things, become sacred? The answer is not just superstition. Salt entered ritual because it had real power in the physical world. It preserved food, it healed, it purified, and because it resisted decay, many cultures began to see it as a substance that could also resist corruption, moral, spiritual, even demonic. Before salt was mystical, it was essential. It kept food from rotting. It made survival possible. It preserved what would otherwise decay. That practical power matters because ritual objects are rarely random. People tend to sacralize what already feels powerful in ordinary life, and salt felt powerful because it held back corruption. Once a substance becomes associated with preservation, it naturally begins to symbolize permanence, endurance, and incorruptibility. Salt did not become sacred in spite of its ordinary use. It became sacred because of it. In ritual history, purification is almost always about removing pollution, not just dirt, but spiritual contamination. Britannica's overview of purification rites describes many ways cultures try to cleanse pollution: washing, sweeping, burning, expelling, transferring, or destroying it. And in that framework, salt makes perfect sense. Britannica notes that in some rites, salt may be used because of its drawing or draining properties. In other words, salt is imagined not just as a symbol of purity, but as something that pulls corruption out. One of the clearest surviving examples is in Japan. In sumo, which grew out of performances for Shinto deities, salt is still thrown into the ring as a symbolic purification. The act is simple, but the meaning is ancient. Salt prepares the space. It cleanses the ground before contact, conflict, or ceremony. This tells us something important. Ritual salt is often not about the person alone. It is about the boundary of a place, a room, a ring, a threshold, a zone that must be made ritually clean before something sacred or dangerous happens. In the Hebrew Bible, salt is not only cleansing, it is covenantal. Leviticus says offerings must be made with the salt of your covenant with God. That phrase appears again in later biblical tradition as a covenant of salt, a striking image that links salt to loyalty, permanence, and relationship. One explanation is obvious and powerful. Salt preserves. So, if a covenant is meant to endure, salt becomes its perfect symbol. But there is more. JTS also notes that salt was part of shared meals and table fellowship in the ancient world, making it a sign of communion, friendship, and binding obligation. In Christian ritual, especially older Catholic practice, salt also appears as a substance of blessing and protection. In the Roman ritual, blessed salt is described as a means of health, a remedy for body and mind, and something that frees places from uncleanness and the influence of evil. That's a major clue to why salt survives in ritual imagination. It stands at the border between medicine and mystery, between the practical and the sacred. It is material, but treated as if it can confront unseen forces. So across traditions, the pattern becomes clear. Salt is used in rituals because it does four things extremely well in the human imagination. It preserves, so it symbolizes endurance. It purifies, so it prepares people and places for the sacred. It protects, so it becomes a barrier against corruption or evil. It marks boundaries between clean and unclean, ordinary and sacred, outside and inside. That is why the same white crystal can appear on altars, in offerings, in purification rites, in blessed objects, and at the edges of ritual space. Salt is not random. Salt is a threshold substance. So why is salt used in rituals? Because long before it was mystical, it was powerful. It preserved life. It fought decay. It cleansed. And once human beings saw that power in the physical world, they carried it into the spiritual one. In ritual, salt becomes a quiet weapon against corruption, a seal of permanence, a purifier of space, a line drawn between chaos and order.